Hello and welcome to the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show live in the On Purpose Woman magazine and global community Facebook page. I'm Ginny Robertson, one of the hosts of the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show, and I'm also the founder and publisher of On Purpose Woman magazine and the founder of the On Purpose Woman global community. My guest today is human design and self-care expert, author and speaker, Kristi Sullivan. And we'll be talking about using self-care to align your energy. So welcome, Kristi. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it too.
So before we dive into this topic, I want to tell our viewers more about you. So Kristi H. Sullivan, a human design and self-care expert, author, and speaker, is on a mission to help busy women stop overflowing. Stop overflowing. That is not right. Stop overworking and start overflowing. She hosts a virtual community for female personal development junkies like herself to create better wellness, improve relationships, shift mindsets, and manifest more success, wealth, and freedom to live their best life by design. Kristi is lead author of a best-selling Amazon book called Stop Overworking and Start Overflowing, 25 Ways to Transform Your Life Using Human Design, that was published in October 2021. And I happen to have the book right here.
Yay.
And she is also the co-author of 3 other collaborative books produced during the 2020 pandemic. So Kristi, you're a self-care expert, which I love, and we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about human design and how they fit together.
Yeah.
I want to start with something I read recently, and it's an article on Forbes that was written by a woman named Tammy Foreman in 2017. And she said that the way self-care is portrayed today is almost completely and utterly backward. First, self-care as a concept is almost exclusively aimed at women, generally wealthy white women who can afford the goods and services that get marketed to them as self-care. The not so subtle suggestion is that women need to be reminded to care for themselves because after all, they are so busy taking care of everyone else. And the even less subtle suggestion is that while we should be taking care of ourselves, that doesn't absolve us from taking care of everyone else. And then she says, self-care is not an indulgence, it is a discipline. And I really love that. And I think that mirrors your philosophy around self-care. So let's get that on the table. What isn't self-care? What do you think self-care isn't? And what is it?
This is a great way to start. And I usually say this at the end of the podcast as my wise words of wisdom, but self-care is not a luxury or a treat or even a task. I call it a necessity or a priority. And it's something like the oxygen mask. We need to put it on every day to feed ourselves, to nurture ourselves, and to show up better, and not better, but to show up and be able to help others and even our families and in business, our clients.
And so I'm sure that over the years you have learned about self-care in a way, maybe that's the way she's talking about here, as to, well, if we're just doing these things, that means we're really taking care of ourselves. If I just get a weekly manicure or pedicure or a massage occasionally, or maybe a bubble bath when I have time, that's self-care. And it's good stuff. I mean, I love all those things, but self-care goes much deeper, doesn't it?
It does. And, when we, I think, are going along in life and doing things like the manicures or pedicures or a massage, or even going out to work out, take a walk. There are things that we think, oh, that's nice if we can do it. Let me find time or find, money again to treat myself to something. But I think self-care goes much deeper. And while those things are nice, and even exercising, eating healthy is important, there's a deeper kind of self-care that when you start to experience it for yourself, that it's something that on an everyday basis, it's so important and key to your energy, to your vitality. Some of that is inner work. Some of that is just exploring who are you at the deeper level. What do you do that's really authentically you? What are you doing that's not you? Maybe for other people that's not serving you. And I also talk about in my books, self-limiting beliefs, and when you experience trauma and need to heal those experiences and heal from them, that even that is self-care, and that isn't quick. It's not a quick fix. It's not just go visit a nail salon and it gets better. It's daily practice and daily work on yourself, for yourself, and again to help you really thrive in life.
I love that. I love how you put that. So let's go back to what you said then about I heard the word daily in there. So, we're not going to get a date. We're not going to do those outer things on a daily basis for the most part. I don't know many women who have a chance to, soak in a luxurious bath every day.
Yeah.
But there are things we need to be doing every day to do the inner work and to keep that going. So what are some of the things that, well, let me back up a little bit. I'd like to hear a little bit about your story and how you got to this place, and then share some of the ways that some of the daily things that you do that are that you found to be so important to you.
Yeah, sure. Yes. I definitely have been through a journey myself that has given me this experience about self-care that I always like to share. And a few years ago, I really was facing quite a number of crises in my life that were unexpected and pretty big. And to have 3 of them happen within a 2-year time frame was definitely had an impact for me. One was my dad had Alzheimer's and was towards the end of his life, and my mom and I were both the caregivers, and that was a hard time. I also had a crisis in my marriage, and that was also difficult on top of what was going on with my father. And then after my father had passed and things were healing for my marriage, I had a job change, and finding out that my job was eliminated, which was a crisis of identity and of like, what's next, and how did that happen so unexpectedly? So there were things that for me rocked my foundation, I would say. And so I knew that doing something like a daily practice, or what I call ritual, something that every day put the attention on my well-being and nurtured me, was really key. And I want to also state that daily practice or ritual does not have to be the same thing every day, and does not have to look like what other people are doing. It really needs to be what serves you, serves your needs. And for me, during that period of time, I did things like making sure I was going out for a walk and connecting to nature. But I also worked with practitioners, and I did things like EFT or tapping. I did some ancestral clearing. I would get massage once in a while because I knew my body needed that. So I did sort of a mix of things, but every day, and I recommend people even keep a self-care journal to just note the things that you are doing on a daily basis. It could be sitting and taking a few breaths and noting that every day, just to do something that's for yourself. And usually that turns into bigger things, or more mindful and more, more than just a few breaths.
Yeah, that's a great tip especially for women who have not yet given themselves that permission. Because I know I've been in the self-care mode for many years. I have the luxury of time and space to do that for myself. Not everyone has that so available. So I think to just one thing, if you're a busy mom of little kids and you have that one thing that you can just get away for 10 minutes and take some deep breaths, or just sit quietly. It doesn't have to be huge, but if that's something different from what you've been doing, it's progress. It's actually the next step. And do you think, Kristi, what happens then as we do those little pieces, or they may be bigger, but they can start out small, that we start to feel into it and kind of feel better, and that inspires us to do more and to keep going and to explore more?
Yeah, I think a couple of things actually happen. I mean, behind the scenes, this is really good for your nervous system, and though stress doesn't go away, how you deal with stress changes. And I also think there's some sort of underlying abstract things that are happening. Like, for example, you find you have more time because you're not in a fight or flight syndrome or situation and rushing, for example, suddenly time starts to stretch. It could be even things like if you're a mom having a dance party with your kids and involving them, and you suddenly find, and they want to do more of that. So it starts to become sort of this, I think this practice again that starts to fit your lifestyle, because your lifestyle starts to change. You don't have as much of that. I don't have time. I can't, all that self-limiting stuff that we put on ourselves and convince ourselves, that we just have to take a back seat. When you start to put yourself first, I think there's what's called the ripple effect. People feel it around you. Your time expands, your well-being wants more of it and calls for more of it. So a lot of things like that I think are happening.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really great to know, because like you say, I love the idea of just a dance. In fact, I have dance parties with myself, and I can pull my husband into them sometimes. And not only is that a form of self-care, and I think it's a form of self-care because it just raises our vibration. It shifts energy. It just, it's joyful. So it does so many things. And some people may look at that as just some silly little thing that you're doing. How can that be self-care? But no, I think it's big. I've noticed for myself that it can shift everything.
And I
Just
love how you
5
tied
minutes.
it. I love how you tied it to energy, because that's definitely an area that I talk a lot about, including when I talk about human design, the human design system. But the energy that we are, if we're feeling stuck or overwhelmed or frustrated, that usually means that our energy is not in alignment with who we are, or that we need to shift that energy, or it could be stuck and we need to move it. So when you look at that, the energetic aspect, that self-care is nurturing for your energy to be the way that it really should be, so that again, you're vibrant and thriving.
Yeah. And instead of feeling like it's selfish, if you will, or maybe you're self-indulgent because you're taking time away, it's like you said, the oxygen mask. You're filling yourself up so you can be the best version of yourself out there for your family, for your community, for your work, for all of that. So it
Yes.
makes perfect sense, but that is not the way most of us were indoctrinated into this.
Probably, yes. And what I'm finding, I think that since the last 2 years, when we've all had to pause in some way, that there's been more attention about self-care, not only physically, but also mentally, emotionally, and that there are, people who are struggling still. It's not to say that it's gone away and that self-care still comes easy, but when one person can help another because they're doing self-care, and then can shift, and those frontline workers, if they're getting self-care, they can find again the energy or the ability to help others more successfully, and just that we can all help each other. And we're finding that we need that ability to be more of a community. And so self-care, pausing, taking the time, again, has that ripple effect, and we're really seeing that more and more, I think, in the last few years.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I know it's increased so much for me. I was already doing a lot, but not being in my car and driving to meetings. I mean, just that alone opened up probably 30 hours a month, if not more. And
Yeah.
so, yeah. And you said something about, how this just expands. It's a ripple effect that as we do this, it expands out. And I think as we give ourselves permission to do that, and we can be an example also to other women, that it's okay to do this for yourself, that and be proud of it, brag about your self-care stuff. I tell people I can sit and do nothing so easily now, where 10 years ago I had to have an excuse. Like, I can just sit and be, where before I would have to be doing something and be in some kind of activity, even if it was clicking the remote. I couldn't just sit and have the TV off. It was a bizarre thing. But again, it was just conditioning,
Yeah. And I love you mentioned this, because I was just thinking of bringing this up, that often we're judging ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
So we're saying, oh, I feel guilty if I take time for myself, or maybe I shouldn't. And a lot of that conditioning, that ideas that we were taught perhaps somewhere along the way from others, or it was passed down from generations, or perhaps again, some life experience that we had, but it's not serving us, because that judgment is really keeping us small. It's not nurturing us. And so what if we, even self-care alone, was just noticing how you do have that voice behind the scenes chattering and giving judgment. And if you just practice giving yourself more self-love, compassion and kindness, and starting to tap into that worthiness. We're all unique. We're all meant to be here with unique gifts. And that worthiness is so important, because again, that has a ripple effect, but that self-worth is really important in order for your self-care to show up and be present without judgment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're going to talk about human design in a little bit, and how that fits in, how human design can help align your energy through self-care. But I think I've had a few sessions with you, and it was during one of those sessions, I think I told you that when I was young, well, I think from the time I could notice it until the time I left home, my mother would never like take a nap during the day, but she would say, I'm going to go lie across the bed. And she would go up to the bedroom. Of course, the bed was made, and she would lie diagonally across the bed without a pillow. And she had a little throw there that she would put over her. And sometimes she didn't even take her shoes off. Her feet just dangled off the edge of the bed. And it wasn't until I was an adult and actually started thinking about that, I thought, wow, she didn't think it was okay. She saw being a housewife and a mom as her job, and she didn't see it as okay to take a nap during the day. And I internalized that in some way. I don't think I ever said I'm going to go lie across the bed. I just didn't. I just had to be tired until it was time to go to sleep. You know what I mean? So it's all these little insidious things that we don't even know that we were reacting to until we can sit and pause and start to really, I think, feel what we need.
Yeah. And at the same time, she was doing self-care. She went, laid down. She didn't take a nap for a long period of time. I think I had a family member who used to call it like, the 10-minute power nap, or his happy hour, where he would just lying horizontal and getting that rest for your body, for your energy to shift. And then, for a lot of people who don't feel like they've got a lot of energy, according to human design, 70% of the population, we're like energizer bunnies. If we're healthy and sleeping well, then we have the energy. So laying down and taking a nap is not our usual thing, but we can just take a break. We can take this pause, and it doesn't have to be a long nap.
Right. Thank you for saying that, because she really was modeling self-care, except I think I just picked up on that she didn't think it was okay, yet she needed it. So rather than trying to plow through, she did do that for herself. And that again was a story she had made up.
Yeah.
I don't think my father had that opinion, about how she shouldn't be taking care of herself.
Right.
So I want to talk for a minute about this chapter that you wrote in your book, Stop Overworking and Start Overflowing. And we've touched on this a little bit, but you say that all of us have received conscious and unconscious conditioning from numerous influencers, such as family, including parents and ancestors, teachers, authority figures, advertising spokesperson, and even celebrities. And you refer to it as a type of brainwashing that encourages a one-size-fits-all in areas like education, work, habits, attitudes, and life in general. Human design, however, helps us understand our unique energetic blueprint, how we were encoded at birth, and how our energy operates differently from others. So tell our viewers some info about what human design is and how it's helped you to align your energy with self-care. I know it's a complicated process, and we don't have a long time, but I just think you're really good at explaining it, for the novice people who've never heard of it.
And just a little plug, I had a past interview that talked more about human design. So I'll just give the little snippet this time, which is human design is your energetic blueprint. And you can look it up online. It's based on your birth date, but what it shows is how you operate. I used this analogy recently that imagine life is the path that we're on. You have a purpose and a journey, but human design is the car that you're driving on that road.
Okay.
And when you look under the hood, you can discover how you run, what's the wiring underneath, who are you, because each car is different and you're uniquely built. And when you understand that, you start to honor who you are and who you're not, more of who you are than who you're not. You understand things like conditioning, what we talked about already, some programming that we received from parents or we picked up that we now just doesn't serve us. But when we look at our human design, it helps us understand what are some ways that we can be more energized. It can talk to self-care by saying, some of the designs that we are not meant to be being like the Energizer Bunny, that they really need more rest, more downtime. We all need really good sleep. So some of us need to lie down 30 minutes before we go to bed. Others can, work up until they're tired. And then without getting a second wind, they need to go to bed. So there's different aspects to human design and there's so much to it. But in terms of self-care, it helped me to realize, again, that self-care is unique, but it's a way for me to align my energy because going out in nature feels good to me. I feel revived. I can come back and do my work from a better place, being more productive. And so I don't have to work as hard. And that's why the book's called Stop Overworking, because we often are trying to work hard before we allow ourselves to have the self-care. And it needs to be reversed.
Okay. And the overflowing piece is kind of like just being in the flow. If we're swimming upstream sometimes, fighting the current, trying to work against our natural instincts. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And knowing that our energy, the way that it operates along that journey that we're taking, there's a certain flow. If we're in that flow and not trying to go against it, then things may line up for us much more easily. We don't have to work harder. We just can work more efficiently. Abundance comes to us in many ways, maybe easier ways. Our mindset feels like it can shift a little bit easier because we're not trying to fight against that. And even things like relationships can get better and your career path can flourish. So there's a lot of benefits of that flow once we get into that with our energy.
One of the things that I learned with my sessions with you that was not surprising, but really informative, is that I'm a generator, which you are too. And, if you look up human design or talk to Kristi, you'll find out what those mean. But you told me that generators have to wear themselves out to get a good night's sleep. They have to be like, and I saw it as used up. And I have had this over the years. I mean, even as a kid, I did not like to go to bed at night. Or I would sneak. I had a TV in my room when I was a little kid, like probably starting around 10. And there were obviously restrictions on it, but I would have to go to bed. And then as soon as I thought everything had settled down in the house, I would turn on the TV. I would lay at the end of the bed with my head out the bottom of the covers and I would watch scary stuff. I would watch anything because I didn't want to sleep. And then my mother would always wonder why it was so hard for me to get out of bed in the morning. And I've been known, even probably, in the last year or two, I've been known to pull some all-nighters just because my energy is still so. And I always saw that as this kind of really positive thing. Look, I've got all this energy and enthusiasm and I can just do this. And I could even do it 2 days in a row if I really want to, And what you taught me is that it feels good to get things done like that sometimes, but it's going against my natural tendencies. What it was telling me, what my body was telling me is that I hadn't used up enough energy during the day. I hadn't moved enough. I hadn't, and so I still had all this leftover energy that kept me from being tired, but I was not using it in the best way for me. Am I saying that pretty well, or?
Yeah, no, it's a great description, great story. My husband used to say, you can sleep when you're dead. And,
I used to say that. I used to, that's a Warren Zevon song, I'll sleep when I'm dead, but I would say I'll sleep when I'm old.
Yeah. And so, sleep really is important. It's where we heal, rejuvenate, restore our bodies, and recharge ourselves for the next day.
And so going back to talking about this generator type that you and I are, and the majority of people are, about 70%, it means what I call, we have a large car battery in that car we're driving. And we can go for a long period of time. Again, if we're feeling healthy. And if we come to the end of the day and we're still feel like going, what it usually signals is maybe we didn't get exercise or physical movement that's important for that energy, because it needs to, like a cell phone battery, it needs to reduce so that at nighttime it can come back even more. Sometimes, like a cell phone battery, it's good for it to go all the way to zero, right? And then there's other types of human design types where throughout the day, they need some plugging in. They need to recharge the battery throughout the day. And again, if they're trying to keep up with everybody else, if those types who don't have the large car battery, like the generators, if they are wearing themselves out, they also won't sleep well because their energy is out of alignment. So, yeah, it's important to just be aware. If you can find out your human design type, it's always interesting and can give you some guidance so that you know whether operating all day feels good. And a lot of people, without even knowing their human design, can tell. Or if you just need more downtime throughout the day, and then making sure you get good sleep. There's so much happening behind the scenes in our bodies and even in our minds and spiritually when we sleep.
And I used to wonder why I didn't like napping. It wasn't that I didn't like it. It was like I would always wake up groggy, and I couldn't take a 10-minute power nap because it would be 30 minutes and I would feel worse than I did before I took the nap. And so I think that's tied into all of that same stuff where I just was not using my energy in the best way that my body needed. And so it's really a great way, I think, to learn about just, and you've said it a number of times, and so have I, it's this overflowing, this way that we could just be in the flow of everything rather than pushing against it and trying to make something happen. Life is so much easier when we can do it.
Yeah. And something I've been sharing recently, especially for the generators, those of us who feel like, well, we don't like to sit still, we like to be busy, that there is now something called functional burnout. So burnout can happen when you literally are drained and feel, like you said, that you just want to maybe sleep all day. But functional burnout is when you're still going, when you still are feeling off, feeling drained, but you keep going, you keep doing things on an empty battery, or you're doing things that don't light you up, that are draining to you, and that drains the battery even more. So that functional burnout is real. I think we're seeing that again with the last few years of people pausing and realizing, I want a better lifestyle. I want a job that supports this lifestyle that I prefer, that's healthier for me. Otherwise, that functional burnout is going to, lead to the wrong road.
Wow, that's the first I've heard that term, functional burnout. But man, I had it. Because again, still going because that was expected, especially in my corporate career, and still acting as though and wondering why everything else felt so. And that's when we start to get ill. We can generate illness that way because things aren't working in our system. But that's really a telling diagnosis of something, isn't it? Functional.
Yes.
We can still look good and be functionally burning out, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's like you said about your corporate job, when we tie ourselves to an external reward, again, like self-care, when we tie ourselves to things like money, the salary, what we don't realize is that we may be earning what we want because we're working hard. But if we worked differently, we actually would probably be allowing more of that abundance and money to flow towards us. We would be perhaps doing things in a way that serves us. And we're not also putting our self-worth on the dollar amount, right? We're valuing more our time freedom. We're valuing more, again, our health and our lifestyle, and saying, what do I really need? Where's that balance so that I'm not burned out?
And what a self-care treat that is, right? To just be
Yeah.
doing everything in our lives, not just those 15 minutes we might take, but every other aspect, our work, our relationships, all of that, from this place of overflow, from this place of following our energy.
Yeah.
So what did you find? Your job was eliminated, and tell us what you were doing then.
I had a long-time marketing career, and I always had a passion for health and wellness. So I was
Okay.
teaching yoga on the side. I always had this like vision of like, how can I help share more about getting people into wellness, or their helping them with their lifestyle, exactly what we're talking about with personal development and self-growth. And yeah, so I made that shift in 2020.
And was your marketing position, was that stressful?
When I started in this career, it was exactly like what fed me. And it wasn't that it was stressful, but I just felt this stronger calling to do
Mhm.
something different and shift. And it was more the alignment of my energy I could feel was not quite the same way as it was when I had started my marketing career. So the timing was so that like I actually changed careers, and I decided to retire from
Mhm.
one career and move into another.
And then how do you use human design to help you work differently? Because you're still doing
Mm,
work, those of us who are self-employed, we're still working, even though it doesn't
yeah.
feel like it a lot. But how do you use human design to do it differently than you were doing before?
That's such a great question. So one of the main things I learned with human design for my type, the generator, was that doing the right kind of work is key, is so important. And the right kind of work is work that lights you up, that doesn't feel like work. So
Mhm.
what happened was I started to explore sort of where in my life, what felt good, what felt like ease and flow. And I just started to do more of that. So I do things like going and networking in groups of like-minded women. And there's women in those groups who are like, tell me more about human design. So then I teach workshops because I like teaching, or I do events or speaking on podcasts and interviews like this to help share. And for me, that's my work, even though it doesn't feel like work. And so
Yeah.
that was really important. It was something I had to discover on my own. And even now, learning not to say yes to everything,
Mhm.
and to say yes to the things that really fit for me.
And I go back to the thing I opened with, it is a form of discipline, isn't it? Rather than this, what did she say? It's not, how did she
A
say
treat,
that?
a
It's
treat,
not
a
an
luxury,
indulgence, it's
indulgence.
discipline.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we really do have to be mindful that we are. And I like your idea of keeping a journal where we write down every day what we did. And we can go back and look at it and actually see and see maybe gauge how we're feeling based on what we've been doing. So we know that it
Exactly.
really is working for us. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Put it right next to the gratitude journal that you keep
Yes.
too.
Yes. That's one of my self-care things that I've been doing for probably 30 years, I guess. Yeah. Since I first heard about it.
Nice.
Well, Kristi, tell everyone how they can find out more about your work, how they could contact you, how they can get your book, just anything you want to tell them right now. Go for it.
Thank you. Well, my book is on Amazon, and I'm actually working on two more collaboration books, so that'll be coming out. But I'm on Amazon as well as on my website. You can find the link. My website is KristiHsullivan.com. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And also, I'm active on Facebook. I have a group called Kristi's Self-Care and Human Design Community. I also am on Instagram a little bit. And that's usually where you'll find me. Also on LinkedIn, but for the most part, I have this community on Facebook that is really where I'm engaged the most.
And anyone can join that community, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. And you also do these kind of introductions to human design
Yeah,
if people want to find out more.
exactly. So if there are people out there who are like, what the heck is human design? I want to learn more about it. I do a once a month human design intro webinar. It's on Zoom. It's free. The last Wednesday of each month. Sometimes the time differs. Sometimes it's in the middle of the day, sometimes the evening. But that's the time when I have a conversation, just a chat with a small group of people and help them understand the basics of human design. And then from there, they can book a reading with me or come into one of my workshops and start to really learn more about themselves.
And they can learn about those webinars on your website as well?
On my Facebook page, but they
Facebook
can
page.
also connect to me through my website and I'll lead them to the right place.
Okay, and give us your website one more time.
Yeah, sure. It's www.Kristi, Kristi, my middle initial, and Sullivan, SULLIVAN.com.
Thank you. And when we started out, you said, oh, this is a great way to start. I usually wrap up with this, like a final word of wisdom. And you gave us some wisdom, but I think it bears repeating. That's an important thing. So as we close this out, would you say those words of wisdom one more time for our audience?
Sure. Self-care is not a luxury or a treat or even a task. It's essential. Make it a priority and put yourself and self-care first.
Yes. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for the work you do to help women, stop overworking and stop overflowing. Because again, I think you are on the same page as me with this, that, we're the women are the ones that are going to like do the big stuff. We're the world changers, and we can't do that if we're depleted. We can't give to anybody. And so thank you for the work that you're doing. That's your job to do. That's your thing to do in this big puzzle that we all are part of, that can create big change. So, and I just thank you for showing up and being here with me today. It was a great interview.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And thank all of you for joining us for the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show live in the On Purpose Woman magazine and Global Community Facebook page. If you love this interview and you want to share it with your friends, it will be on our YouTube channel in the next 48 hours. So go on over to On Purpose Woman Global Community on YouTube, subscribe, and you might want to sign up for notifications. Right now, there are close to 100 inspiring, informative, and fun shows for you to watch on our channel. We're in the process of scheduling shows for May and June, so you can find info about those in the new issue of On Purpose Woman magazine, which will be out on May 1st. And you can go to opwgc.com and get more information about that. And thank you again for watching the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show.